Welcome to this breakout session, 5 Myths of Innovation. I'm so happy to see so many of you here. I hope you had a great lunch and a lot of coffee, and you promised me to stay awake for the next 45 minutes. My name is Tatiana Solodko Kuruca, and I'm an innovation leader at Cybercom. And I will be your moderator today for this session. For those of you who don't know Cybercom and haven't tested our popcorn or some games that we have today, Cybercom is an IT consultancy company that focuses a lot on innovation and sustainability. And today we would like to debunk the 5 most common myths of innovation. And why did we choose this topic, and why do we think it is important to talk about it at Women in Tech? Well, we all know that we are facing now as a society some of the most challenges, problems that humanity has probably faced ever before. We have to solve climate change, we have increasing inequality, we have increasing population, aging population, massive extinction of species, and I can go on and on and on. And if we just take a look at the future, if we take what will happen to us 10, 20, 30 years ahead, we can easily see that these problems will just grow bigger and bigger. And that means that we badly need the right type of innovation. We need to come up with smart solutions to these very big problems. And that's why today we would like to inspire you to learn more about innovation and to take control of innovation. Because we would like women to take much larger space and have a much stronger voice and be at the forefront of innovation. And at the same time, what we see as well is that still, while we all agree that innovation is extremely important, it's still quite often treated as something magical, as something you have to be born with, or as something that only Google or Spotify has, and if you don't have it, like, you don't have it for life. So with that, I have today an absolutely fantastic panel, 3 senior innovation professionals who will help me today to take the fog out of the topic of innovation. And I would like you now to give a big applause to Liselotte Engstam. She is the non-executive chairman and member of the board of several companies. She is a startup coach and advisor. Anna-Karin Lindblom. Anna-Karin is a director of accelerated innovation at Husqvarna, and Karolina Bjurehed, who is responsible for innovation partnerships at Volvo cars. So welcome, and thank you so much for being here. I know all of you are extremely busy women, and I know it was difficult to find time. I know, Anna-Karin, you are actually running 2 design sprints this week, so it's a busy time
but
for you.
nothing could stop me from coming here. This is really exciting.
And I know all of you are very passionate for Women in Tech course. So I think before we go into the juicy part of debunking the myth of innovation, I would really like to hear, how did you end up where you are today? A little bit your story, because if I look back at 15, but even 10 years ago, the profession of innovation management didn't really exist. And even today, if you ask people on the street, you know, what is project manager doing or what is marketing director doing, everybody has an answer. But if you ask what is innovation professional doing, most people would have it difficult to explain or have very different answers. So I'm very curious, how did you end up there? So Karolina, we start with you.
How did I end up here? I've always been a very creative person. When I was younger, it was not really a good thing. I think my parents at least didn't like it.
Okay.
But I realized I need an education, so I went to the university, studied information science and computer science. I learned to code. My first job, this is embarrassing, my first job was as an IT manager at a small company.
Oh, that's the least embarrassing first job.
No, the problem was that I was a little bit creative with my programming skills. So I did a few mistakes. I actually got fired after 3 months. But then I realized that this is not the environment I want to work with at all. I want to work with a more creative environment. So I ended up in Ericsson, and there I can start to explore like things that I started to do things that could help the employees in their daily life at the site that I worked at. And then I went to the university. I went back to the university to work for them, and I built the first app for students in Sweden to help them to have control of the schedule, called Tentor. Apply for Tentor, have the results and stuff in an app. And after that, I happened to go to Volvo, and I'm very driven to create a better life for people. I want people to have a hassle-free life or do whatever I can to make them feel better. So that's actually what drive me in my work, and that's why I ended up where I am, I think. I love bringing in innovation, new technologies, startups into the company to see what magic we can do with them.
Yeah, it sounds like you're exactly at the right place.
Yes.
And Anna-Karin, what about you?
Yeah. Once upon a time, a long time ago, when I was at university, I did a master's in mechanical engineering, kind of a traditional engineering degree. But I was not really into the, like traditional engineering, the construction or coding for that sake. And then when it was time to choose like the master's program, there was a new thing, and it was called integrated product development. And this was way before lean startup and Spotify, for that sake. And agile was not even invented, I think. But I think this was kind of the start of it, because it put the customer in the center, and it focused on how important it is to bring the customer in early and really try out new things, but not on your own, with the customer and in a cross-functional team. And I think that put me off in the direction that, even if I've been at really large companies like Ericsson, for example, or really small companies where I've also worked, I think that putting the customer in the center and working cross-functionally has always been there with me, whether I've been in product management or business development. But
and developing new products.
Yes.
Okay, so you kind of ended up there from the beginning, but it was called something different to a certain.
Yeah, but I think that is kind of has been with me all the time. And now being with Husqvarna, helping the company to start working more with startups, bringing in external partners to test new things faster in the market. It's kind of what I started doing when I did my master's. So I think it fits together, even if you don't have that big plan from the beginning.
Yeah. And Liselotte, I know you wanted to tell something different maybe, but I have to ask you about your NASA story.
Okay. Well, I was very interested in sustainability, and when I started to go to school, it was even longer time ago. There were only 2 places I could go. And one of them was actually to become a civil engineer at Chalmers. So I spent all of these years there. And when it was time to get out, we had all of the companies coming in to try to get and employ us. We were 7 women and 150 men in my class.
7 out of 150.
Yeah. And they told us 7 women, there's no point that you apply for any job because we're not going to hire you anyway. And then I got
Okay, luckily things have changed.
And then, well, I think people can actually end up in the same corner. I'll show you what I did. I was so furious. I used my energy to write to a couple of places. And one of them that I wrote to was to NASA. And I said, here's the situation. Do you need somebody like me? So my first job was with NASA. And what I didn't know was that I actually had to work with computer then. And computer was actually something that I used to calculate things. I didn't really understand what it was. But I ended up being recruited back then by IBM. So I've done a long career with IBM. I've done a long stint with an Indian company called HCL. And now I work on boards. And one of the things that I figured out when I got on boards is that I don't even think board work works. So now I'm also researching how we can bring in more innovation on boards.
And you're also researching how to educate boards about AI and how...
Yes.
Yeah. I love your NASA story because I think it takes such guts if you've been told that nobody's going to recruit you to write to NASA and say, well, why don't you?
Yeah. Yeah, but it also gave me energy. So I think that's worth thinking about as well. When you get something to stop you, move somewhere else. Don't push if it's too hard there. You can move somewhere else.
Yeah. And I think one thing we can learn from you is all of you started somewhere very different, but you pursued your passion and what you're good at. And you now working where you are at, working with innovation, with boards. And I think also we can't predict where we will be in 5 years and what roles and what kind of professions there will be in the future. So we have to be flexible and curious about things.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. So now we're going to move to the 5 myths of innovation. And we actually met before and we discussed a little bit and chose the ones that we are really passionate about and the ones that we really feel. If there are 5 things that we would like not to hear about innovation anymore, to a certain degree, these are the 5 things. So with that, we have the first one, and I would say it's a bit of a cheat, we know, because it's kind of 2 in 1, but you have to forgive us. So this is about that quite often we're so much in love with ideas, aren't we? And we quite often say that innovation is ideas, and we collect ideas. We want many new ideas in our companies. So we say innovation is new ideas, but also, especially at this conference, we quite often associate innovation with new technology. So if you're working with AI, if you're working with blockchain, that means you're working with innovation. And that you're also innovative. So I would like to hear your opinion on that. Karolina, what would you say? Is innovation equals new ideas?
No, it's not that at all. Innovation is actually to take something that you have today, something you do today, and do something else with it, or do it better. That's innovation. It's not to create crazy stuff. That with things like a totally new tech or something. It's to take what you have and do it better or do something else with that you have.
And are we talking about here incremental innovation or disruptive or both? Or
It's both, I would say. I don't know what you say. What do you think about it?
I would say, I mean, we're with high-tech companies. We spent our careers in high-tech companies. Many of you are with high-tech companies, and in high-tech companies, we are very in love with our technology.
Yes.
And we're really, fond of making cool new products.
Yes.
But I think we often fail there, because if you only look at like the new idea, the new technology, oh, how can I use this new technology? You forget the two other perspectives that are really important. It's not just the technology, it's at least as much the user and the customer and then the business side. Because if you don't have these three in combination, new technology maybe, or some sort of technology, the customer, the user experience and the business perspective, is this something that's going to fit the market? Then it doesn't matter that the technology is new and cool.
Right.
So I think that's really important to bring in these three, and also to bring in like views and competence and energy from the outside.
Yeah.
Everything is not in the company.
Yeah, and right, isn't it that I think in terms of return on investment, if you invest in product innovation, your return on investment is much smaller than comparing that you returned in business model innovation or brand innovation.
Now look at Dublin 10 ways of innovation. When you see, I mean, there's almost always a big focus on the product innovation part, but then you have 9 different other ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have different types of innovation, not just product innovation, not just technology. And I'm also interested, so when we talk about ideas, what is actually happening with them?
Well, I think it's interesting. I think it's very easy to get stuck on the idea phase. But one of the things you can see now is there's, for instance, a number of accelerators where they actually provide the ideas. And the biggest thing is actually to get the team together that can add value. Because what you really need to do is to be really patient and driving the things through. When I look at new opportunities, I usually ask people, well, how many times have you done a pivot? Have you changed it? And if they say no, then I usually think, okay, it could be one of these 100,000, but probably not. So probably they haven't tried enough, meeting with the customer, actually understanding, talking, and getting to the through business value. But I think in larger corporations, I think there's a huge need to actually get the ideas up and have a way to prioritize them, put them into a structure, put them into a system, so they don't die on the bottom floor, that you actually get them in. But also learn from the challenge and kill your darlings quickly.
And what can you do so that ideas don't die?
Sorry, once more.
So what can you do? You said that
Ideas don't die. I think some ideas should die.
Yeah, yeah.
And they should die young.
And they should die
Right.
young. I think
They
that's
should die young,
probably
okay.
the most
That's a good
important
one.
things. But the number of ideas coming up shouldn't die. And for that, I think you can do a lot of different things. I think you can have ideas for your own organization. I think now, in many cases, the really good ideas happen when you collaborate with somebody else. So a large company collaborate with a startup, or between different companies, or you arrange hackathons with open source. Somebody comes in with a new perspective. And I think those are the things that you as a company need to try to facilitate.
That I agree with you on. But because if you have an idea and you find other people in the organization that has the similar ideas, gather together and do stuff. Try it out. You ask your manager for, like, can I do this for 10% of my time for the next coming 3 months or whatever? Do it. And that the company needs to support that. Otherwise, innovation will die.
Okay, so we need to. So just having ideas is not enough, and we need to make sure that we test the initial idea and that we are ready for it. We are ready to kill it or change it. So essentially, the initial idea doesn't have as much of a value as when it's actually brought to life and tested. Yeah. And ideas die young. I'll remember that. Ideas should die young. They shouldn't. Good one. So now we have the second one, and Okay, I'm also sitting on the board of Swedish Association of Innovation Managers, and sometimes that's this kind of thing that is discussed. and I personally heard myself this quote several times, which is that we can't innovate because we don't have the culture of innovation. Google has it, Amazon has it, we don't have it, and that's why we are kind of doomed. Yeah, heavy one.
Oh, it's a good one.
Anna-Karin.
Yeah,
Are we
I think
doomed?
it's, no, I don't think we're doomed at all, which is of course a good thing. But I don't think it's about having or not having a culture of innovation. It's not, you know, it's not how you paint your walls or if you have, you know, bean bags to sit on. It's about, you know, integrating it into your strategy and understanding that it is important, but also understanding that, you know, the KPIs you put and how you measure it, because that is actually what's driving things to happen, are not maybe the same as measuring revenue or gross margin. You have to understand that maybe it's about speed, and maybe it's about measuring, you know, how fast do you kill your darlings, and how far are you willing to try.
So you basically, you have to have a plan.
You have to have a plan, and you have to understand, I think, that it needs to be worked into the strategy, and it's hard work as, you know, any other part of the business, but you need to set it up a little bit differently, and you need to allow for mistakes, and also value the learnings that you make.
Yeah.
And I think, like you said, Liselotte, that it's about the speed and how quickly you understand what not to do.
I think there are companies which are a bit better on culture and actually keeping the innovation alive. But actually, if you look at the most significant innovations, they have almost always come out of adversities.
Yeah.
So actually having too much resources or too much time or too much opportunities is actually not good either. And I think that to get the good opportunities almost always comes from the people in the company daring to bring something forward. And I think it's really interesting, because I think that if we look at our really good innovators, they are putting themselves out for social risk of being ridiculed, risk of not looking as I'm doing the right thing. You have to be daring a bit, and I really would want very many more women to actually put yourself out there and try a bit more, because that's when you're going to win. You don't win all the time, but you will win some of the times.
Yeah. So on a company level, we need to, what you're saying, we need to treat innovation as any other part of our business, and we need to have a strategy and KPIs and a plan for it. It doesn't happen by itself. But on a personal level, we need to dare and take risks. That is so good. Now we are touching on the like what the company's strategy when it comes to innovation should be. And here we have a bit of a controversial myth that you can hear a lot among innovation professionals, and it sounds like management, and quite often here we mean top leadership, doesn't understand innovation. So, in your opinion, do they understand? And if they don't, what is it that they don't understand? And what is it you would like them to understand?
I think we have a slight bit of disagreement in the panel, maybe. But and of course, you can't generalize too much. But sometimes,
maybe after today's session, we will have to look for a new job.
Sometimes they don't understand, because I think it might be a new way of working, and you're trying to do everything the same. But if you look upon it as you have different buckets, maybe you have 70% where you run your normal big projects, next generation of this product line, and that is done in an efficient, large project way, and you know how to do it. But then maybe you have 20% that you put in like adjacent, close to what we're doing, and then we start trying a bit of new things. But maybe then you have 10% that you are willing to risk, and there you need to work in a bit different way, and you need to measure different things and take higher risk. And I think this is not always on the top of their mind, and I think that could be one way why it's sometimes perceived that they don't understand.
They don't understand that different types of innovation needs different types of management or and strategy, right? So we are talking about that we are quite often, majority of the time and the resources of the company goes to incremental innovation, and we have great system for that. But maybe for more disruptive or adjacent type of innovation, we need to have different systems in place. Right.
I think I've seen parts of that, but of course there are other views as well.
Yeah.
And Karolina, I'm wondering, you're working in Volvo cars, right? So Volvo cars, in my opinion, has been always challenged by competition, but now you're in the industry that is majorly disrupted. So what is how do you experience that? Does leadership prioritize innovation? Do you feel enough support? And do you feel that in this kind of industry there is enough of understanding of why we need innovation and how to do it?
I would say that we are very good at innovation, and the leaders in the company are they understand the importance of innovation, so they support it. So yes, we have innovation teams, but innovation happens in every little team in the company. Everyone has the possibility to be innovative, and if you look at Volvo's history, being innovative is actually what made us survive. We invented the 3-point belt. We gave away the patent, so others could use it. So it's a heritage. We are innovative, and the management from the top and down understand that we need to work with innovation.
And do you feel the pressure from the...
No, I don't feel the pressure. It's just that no one say that you can't do this or can't do that. Of course, we need to prioritize, but we know how important it is to continue to evolve to survive the future.
Yeah. And I wonder, Liselotte, you are sitting on so many boards and you're coaching many board members. I wonder your perspective.
Well, I think my perspective is firstly that if you have managed to get to the top of a company, in most companies, you actually are a bit innovative yourself. But I do agree on the structure and the system, and what I think we will see actually developing, and it's even part of my research, is that we will develop much more management systems for innovation, because we haven't had that. And you can see it actually in many companies right now. It goes under the heading of innovation theater. We're trying everything. We have somebody digital responsible. We put together some innovation teams. We start up some corporate VCs. We do a bit of all. And we don't really have a very good structure of actually keeping that together. Or to fence it, which I think is a really big responsibility of the board, to understand how do I fence so that things don't die when things happen. And things should die, as we talked about, but not all things should die. And it's very easy when you get into a bit of crisis that you kill these extra, you sell off the VCs and you kill these extra innovation things.
Exactly, I wanted to ask you, because we know when times go bad, the first thing that is getting closed is the innovation lab. So how can, and this is where actually you need innovation the most.
But I think an interesting thing that we also forget is that our most common tool to innovation is acquisitions. Okay. That is actually our most common tool to innovation. We didn't get up with an idea, but we wanted to get into either a geography or a new space. So we acquire innovation. Then we also need to work with it so we don't kill it just because we acquired it. But I think that is a way to continue to look at that. And there's some fantastically interesting new ways that will entail, because I think we will have to work much more in ecosystems going forward. And I know you are trying to get the innovation energy out of your ecosystems now, isn't that right?
Yes, we try. We build communities I built a community around the work we do with startups, and I did that because we have so much innovation coming from the outside. Now it's new tech, to be honest, but a lot of new tech coming in there, and we want people to see what they can use these new technologies for, what they can do with it and create new innovations. And I want everyone in the company to be a part of this community and have everyone engaged.
Yeah. So, okay, we talk about that we have a big bulk of innovation coming externally from acquisitions and from working with startups, but also internally there is a big need to protect innovation.
Yes.
From the leadership, and that's
part of management. I do have to say, though, that one part is also for the boards and the management to actually say something about in which area we're going to innovate. Because that's very hard to understand when you're furthest out. You can't understand why you don't innovate around your small area, something. Well, maybe long term, we are going to go into another area, and you would know that sitting on the management team, and then you try to direct areas that you want to have innovation in or increase the collaboration with other companies. And I think that is a really important thing to find a way to do, to drive your strategy, but to pad it with innovation, because you will never be able to do a strategy in one line anymore.
So you need to protect, initiate, protect, and also focus innovation effort somewhere. That's very good. Moving to our fourth myth, and I hope it may be relevant for this particular audience, and this is that innovation equals agile. So sometimes we associate agile with working. We say we're working in sprints, we're working with Scrum, we're working with Kanban. That's why we are innovative and we work. This is our innovation process. And I'm just wondering, what different types of or formats of working with innovation? We already touched on some. We touched on mergers and acquisitions. We touched on working with startups through accelerators. What other types of innovation your companies are, and forms of innovation your companies are have today?
I think you, Liselotte, pointed out a really good thing here, that many companies, we are so eager to pursue all different ways of innovation, and sometimes it's a little bit hit and miss. I mean, agile is great for software development, but it's not perfect for everything. So it's important to see that it's not about doing a method, it's about finding the right method for your specific task. And sometimes it's excellent to do a design sprint to quickly test new things. But sometimes it doesn't work. You need to look at the problem you're sitting with and then choose the right method for that.
So as any professional, you should have a large toolbox of methods, and agile is just one of them, right?
Yes. But I think also bringing in again what we all talked about, open innovation, working with startups, being part of an ecosystem, and then finding new ways that works when it's not just your company.
Right. Actually, it's very interesting with startups. So I work sometimes in accelerators as well, and we usually actually tell the startups that if you have too much agility, you will be all over the place. Okay. You actually need to have somebody that puts down the foot and takes the risk of the direction, because otherwise, if you let it go too much, it's going to be very hard to get anywhere. And that's probably one of the hardest things. It's to take a decision, to risk, to actually go somewhere, which then doesn't totally support all agile methods.
But then I think as a large corporate, working with these excellent startup networks and incubators and accelerators, and I mean in Sweden and Stockholm we're extremely lucky.
Yes.
And we have Sting and we have Ignite and we have things, and they are all working with the startups to make them better at working with us large corporates.
Yeah.
So I think that's a
I think that
good
is
way.
really interesting. It goes back to the community to find ways to add value in the intersections. And I think that is when you're going to start to go quickly. But one of the things when I coach startups, I say you can't let the grown-up companies dictate where you're going, because you're going to be dead before they have started to take the first decisions. So
And
you really
I
need to
like how both of you.
you really
Agree.
need to work at the pace where you need to be, and find good collaborations.
And that's a challenge sometimes, because you can compare a startup that's the little mouse running very fast, and then
Yes.
you have the big elephant, and that's us. And we try to dance together, and that's sometimes very, very difficult. We are so slow in our processes.
Yeah.
Even if we are innovative, we are
Right.
slow.
Yes.
But that's also important then to learn from that, I
Exactly.
think, and understand that I can't come with my 50 pages NDA from American lawyers saying that you're going to sign this, and we're going to take your kids and send them to the moon if you don't apply with this.
Yeah.
Doesn't work. You need to maybe scale down and find something. This is the contract we're going to have when we start working with startups, and do it step by step. And I think, I mean, when we've done that, that is, I think, when things have been much, much faster than before. So,
And I think both our companies has been through that quite painful journey and learning.
And I like so much that we're covering so many different aspects of innovation. It's one thing for a startup and one type of process, and still many different types of methods, and it's different and different challenges for a large company. So innovation has really so many different phases and aspects. But I would like now to go back to us, actually, individuals, and talk about our final myth. So a question to you: how many of you felt like this? Yeah, I see some hands. Yes, yes. I'm not creative, or I'm not the creative type, or in Swedish I heard many times, jag är ingen idésprutare. So, and if we want to kill one myth today, that would be really, really the one. So, please.
I can start, because
Yes.
this is super.
And
something I feel very
we
strong.
know we can talk about it for an hour here. We don't have an hour, but
we can do that though.
No, but I think sometimes people focus on being like, oh, I'm not creative, I'm not idéspruta, whatever. But do you try to do things better in your daily life? Most people do. Then you are creative. So all of us are creative in one way or another. That's who we are. And I think more the company that you will work for in the future, they need to allow you to be creative. And I think there is where many companies kill your creativity, because they are not transparent enough. Maybe you don't feel safe enough on your at your daily work, and they don't allow people to be radically open-minded. And this is more down to the company you work for. They need to allow you to be like open-minded, and they need to share information so you feel secure. Then you will be innovative.
I totally agree. And it's not about, the person being or not being creative. It's about creating the environment where creativity can grow and really thrive. Making sure that you have, like you said, possibility to think outside the box, cross-functional teams, build on each other's strengths, and the flexibility to put the right team together for specific tasks. I think that is crucial.
And I mean, the companies at the same time are made of people. So what can we do to boost our own creativity, but also to allow creativity in our companies to a larger extent?
Yeah, well, when I coach leaders, they often actually say the same thing. I'm not creative, I'm not in that space, and I don't come with the ideas. And I say, no, because that's not where you're supposed to be. What you're supposed to be good at is to ask the right questions.
Okay.
And actually, to ask the right questions is actually something you can practice. We can all practice. And I encourage people to actually write down, when you go on a mingle, 5 generic questions that you will ask people as you meet them. Because if you do, you will get so much information from them. And with that information, you get ideas. And then you become creative.
Because you need something to be creative about, right?
Yes, absolutely. But curious and asking questions takes practice. And I would encourage everybody to try to start to be really, really good in asking questions, because that is where you find the gold.
Yeah. The way I see creativity as any muscle that we have, and you need to train the muscle. You can't expect my most nightmare scenario, you being at the meeting where you discuss how to cut costs, and then you're invited to a white room with a white table with the same people, and now you're supposed to think outside of the box. How creative will you be? Well, not much. Right. So there are so many ways to how we can boost our creativity and encourage creativity and innovation in our companies. So if you will take one thing from this session, is be curious and make sure that you create the environment that allows and encourages creativity at your work. Because that will just, that opens so many new wonderful things. So we kind of covered all the 5 myths, and what I will take from this session with me is that innovation is so much more than new ideas. It is more than technology. There are so many different types of innovation, and it is also about execution and perseverance and how we take this innovation forward. We talked about that culture of innovation is not created by itself. You need to have a plan for it, you need to have a strategy, you need to have leadership that is on board and that is supporting and focusing innovation efforts. We also said that you need to, not all ideas need to survive, and you need to prioritize, and ideas should die young, the ones that are not so good. And in the end, we talk about that you need to dare to innovate, you need to be curious, you need to ask the right questions, and you need to ask right, and you need to practice your innovation skills, right?
And bring in the customer. Ask the customer.
Yeah.
Don't wait. Dare to bring in the customer day one.
Yeah.
And start sharing your ideas with other people. Do that. If you have an idea, start talking to your friend, whatever. You can't do things on your own. You're better if you're 2, 3, 4, 5 people doing it.
Perfect. So bring the customer, start sharing your ideas. Liselotte, any tips?
Well, I would say for women, try to be as much as you can in control positions, with which I mean close to the customer or even owning a P&L, because then you have the ownership of actually building in innovation. So try to get into the control position in companies.
So you're saying that we should in order to protect and be in charge of innovation, you need to be
in charge of business.
In charge of business, responsible for P&L, for example. Yeah. That's a great advice. Thank you. So with that, we would like to wrap up this session. And thank you so much for being here. And please give a big applause to our amazing panelists. Thank you so much for doing it.